Hello! So last month I released a challenge in our Discord server, the Seagull Lab, and the challenge was to rig an umbrella. So this is a very simple prop, and I've done this exercise in the past when I was starting to learn how to rig, but it can become very complex. It depends of how far do you want to take. So our only criteria was that you would have to have one control to open and close the umbrella. And it could be done in Maya, Real, Blender, whatever. So I've done in a reel in two different ways, which I'm going to share with you here. And also in the end, I'm going to share a couple of the videos that people shared in our community. And if you want to join us, the link is down below and is free. So yeah, hopefully we can do more of this challenge in the future. And thanks for watching. So let's get into it. So these are the two versions that I've done. The one on the right is just a controller that opens and closes and is based on an animation asset. And the one on the left is an IK rig for all the joints here. And then it also has some cloth simulation that I was just playing with. Not perfect, but yeah, it's just an exercise. So before we start, I just want to give a shout out to the props and the materials that I'm using. So I've downloaded the umbrella from this link here, and it's for Blender. So it comes with this animation, it's rigged and it comes with this animation. So I just downloaded for Blender and I exported as an FBX. And I'm also using this lighting studio, just a basic setup for lighting camera. Okay, so we start with the yellow option on the rig. Basically what it does is that it has this one control and goes from this pose to this pose. The way I've done this is that, as I said, this asset came with an animation. So we have this animation here. And then what I've done is that I came all the way to the end and I created a pose asset from this current pose, which is this pose asset here. So if I go 0 is the basic pose, if I go to 1, then it goes to that final pose. And now I'm going to apply this in a rig format. The way I'm doing it is that I'm defining what will trigger this pose here. So what is the thing that actually is the key movement here, like a bone. I'm looking for a bone that actually will tell me when this should be triggered or not. Think about this as like a set-driven key in Maya. If you're familiar with Maya, or this is how we also do corrective poses. So if an arm is like raised up, then do this extra movement on top. In this case, what I'm looking for is this movement here, like in the middle. So there is a joint in here, bone, that is called push. And so let's just make this visible. So there's this bone here, push, which pushes, let me disable here. It pushes this little button thing up and down. So the rule I'm going to create is that if this is translating this position, keep this pose. But if the text that this translation is down here, do the end pose. So to do that, I'm going to have an animation blueprint, which you can just create by right click, create animation blueprint. And if you come here, we are going to use this node, pose driver. It's quite simple. So if you go pose driver, and then first thing you need to do is you need to pass what is the pose asset you want to fix. So ours was this one, umbrella closed pose asset. Then I need to give what bone I'm searching for this movement, this key movement. So if I add here push is my bone, and I also want to change it as a translation of rotation. Normally we use rotation, for example, of the arm fix that I gave, but in this case it's just translation. If it's up, it's open, if it's down, it's closed. And then what we need to do is that you come here in tools and say copy all poses from assets. And then what we want to see is that let's just play an animation here. So closed. No, not the pose assets, the actual animation. So if you play an animation, you see that this bar here will go from 0 to 100. So that's the same behavior we want to be seeing here. Let me just make this as a loop animation, and I'll also make it a bit slower so we can see the transition a little bit better. So you see, as the joint goes down, it matches the pose that we have. So let's just replicate this here. One thing we'll have to change is this radius, and I'm just going to plug in here to see how it is working at the moment. So you can see that it's trying to reach, but it's not reaching like 100% of the pose. So that's when you need to play with the radius. I think the radius is quite small, so it doesn't really, it can't really understand like where you should be looking for. So he's just as a 1. Let me put as a 5 so we can see the difference. So you see how 5 actually, it just translates a little bit and is already closed because it's getting like too close to this thing. So we definitely want it lower, and the number I was using here was 0.2. So 0.2, when it's approaching, it gives me a nice blend, and movement is based on what I was expecting. So basically we need to play around with this value and see what works best. And that's essentially it. So if I move it here, you can see that the pose was going up and down. Okay, but our challenge in the server, the Discord, was to actually have one control that does this movement, right? So how we're going to have a control that uses this information? So the way to do this is that I want a control that actually moves that joint, right, up and down. So I created a control rig that is literally just that. It has this one push control, and this, I literally just right click it in a bone. Let me just do it. So if you just right click here, new element, new control, you create a control in the exactly same position as the bone, and then I'm just using the forward solve to get the transform of the control and set the transform of the bone. So now if I go up and down, I am actually moving the bone around using this controller. But of course it's not affecting the rest of the rig because this is in the blueprint, right? So the way I can use this information is that I can go to the asset, to the skeletal mesh, and I can add that blueprint as a post-process blueprint. So if I go down, I can never find this here. So post-process anim blueprint is a blueprint that is going to run after the animation is done. That's the enable disable here. So if I put my blueprint in here, and is this one, means that it will run an animation, and then after the animation is calculated, you run this thing here on the top. So if I have my rig here, it's not doing anything, but if I enable my post-process animation, it will actually work because it's then moving the bone, and then the pose driver is then calculating how the pose should be. And that's how we rigged our first umbrella. So for our second umbrella, I'm actually just moving the controls to a specific pose. So I have these controls here that actually move the rig around. Let me just reconnect this. So they are IK controls that, do this movement with the bone chain. And then I have this controller on the top that basically When it's 0 is just in this pose, but then when I connect, when I move them up, it basically moves all the other controllers down here so they get together. The result is not as neat as the animation one and as the pose one because I'm also using cloth. So yeah, it was just a way of testing how to do things. So the way I've done it is that I've used a couple of different things here. So in the construction event, I have an array with all the end bones positions of this rig. Let me just show the skeleton so it's a bit more clear. This rig for some reason has so many joints. So yeah, so this is the whole hierarchy of the skeleton. So I'm basically selecting the main ones here, which are this one, this one, this one, and I'm creating a control on the end of it. So to do that, I'm getting an array with all those bones, and I'm going for each of these. I want to spawn a transform control. I have to admit, every time I use this, I feel it's a bit buggy. Sometimes it doesn't work as expected, and you you can't like really edit things here because you see they're marked as yellow. So that means that they are procedurally generated. So you can't just like move them around and play around in here. I personally prefer to just do everything by hand unless it's a very modular rigging system you're working on. But we are using for the purpose of learning and exercising. So if you spawn transform control, you can give like the positioning. So the initial value here, I'm getting the element, get the transform, check the initial, and I'm passing this as the initial value. And I'm making them visible. I change their color to be yellow. And I've done as a parent of the push control. So the push control I've done manually, a bit like the other one that I've done in the red in the yellow yellow umbrella. And then something I'm using here is the concat, so I can get the name of the bone and I can add underscore control in the end. So to create the IK controls, which are these ones, I'm basically getting this bone chain and I'm just creating a function because I had to create for each of these chains. So I thought it was easier just creating a function. And the function is basically calculate a pole vector and calculate the basic IK. So for the pole vector and for the IK, I'm actually, as you can see, I'm just passing a bone number. So here in the entry, you can just add an item here. So I'm adding, a name, and I'm adding a description here. So this in this case is, for example, 001. So that means that, for example, for the basic IK, the first item I'm getting is the main umbrella bone 001. So we'll find it here, 001, and the second bone, which is this main one here, the second bone I'm getting is the long bone, which is the second one here, long bone. I'm getting them as a item B and also as a effector item. It's just that, I mean, this rig wasn't done by me, so I would have simplified a lot of this. But basically, I'm just concatenating the number of the bone, and like the end one is this one. So the three bones I'm using is the umbrella bone 001, umbrella long bone 001, and then umbrella long bone end. So in this case of the end, I'm concatenating three items. So long bone, then I pass the number, then I pass the end. And that's what I'm using as the third item. And then for the effector, I'm getting the controller, which is the one I've created, and all follows the same name. So blah 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 blah, long bone 001 end control. I get the transform control, and I pass as an effector. And I did the same for the pole vector here, and yeah, it's just pretty simple. So basically now I can just duplicate this and create IK controls for all of my bones. And then now what I want to do is that I want to move. As I move this control, I want the controllers to move with me. Actually thinking now, they shouldn't really be parent of this main one. Yeah. So the way I do this is that I created this control and it's a float, and I just changed the primary axis to be y, so it goes kind of up and down like this, and I put a minimum and a maximum of 0 to 1. So this is a float, basically 0 to 1. And then what I'm doing is that I am setting a transform for all these bones here, so all these controllers. So I want all the controllers basically to be in position 0, 0, 0. And that means that if they are in 0, 0, 0, they are in the center of the world and the umbrella will look closed. To use that, I'm using this node interpolate. So I'm interpolating between their original position and being, oops, let me just connect in here. And let's just hide the joints. So I'm interpolating between the original initial position, if it's 0, or if it's 1, it will interpolate with these values I'm passing here, which is in this case going down in the middle. But then to control this value, I'm then getting the push control, and then I'm moving the float to here, and then that's what I'm passing from 0 to 1. So basically I can also have the in-betweens. That's how I've done this setup. Now for the cloth, I just did a very quick pass on here on the clothing. So if you right click here, you can remove, well, you can remove. I will show how that done, and then I'll just show again how to apply. So basically, if I didn't basically tweak much of this thing. The thing that I've done the most was actually painting it. And so if you go in active cloth painting, you can see that I just painted the max distance to be a little bit stronger in these parts, but to be 0 in the middle. So you get the nice kind of fold in between. So basically, let's just do it again. So if I remove this and I create clothing from data, you need to have a physics asset for it. The physics asset is just literally yeah, a sphere. So if you create one here, it will now it's showing me two options. The 0 is the one I had before, and this one is the one I'm creating here. And then if you select the mesh and go activate cloth painting, you can start painting. So let's paint the max distance, and I'm just painting here as 1, for example. And you can change, brush, you can change the intensity, paint value. Now I'm painting here 100% of these. And there are other settings here. I'm not going to go into details, but you can add other types of masks. So you can have, annealing drive stiffness, you can have drag lift, whatever. You can paint all these masks. So you can go into really, really a lot of detail. Let's say I'm happy with this. If I right click and go apply clothing data, I will apply the number 1, which is the one I just created. And then you can see that it's just affecting this part because it's the only part that I've painted. And if I remove it, you can see in the rig that it's not, is just doing the actual rig movement, the IK, and then if I apply, is already like showing a little bit of the fold. So one important thing is when you use cloth in sequencer is that if you go here and let's just keyframe this here and then keyframe here, you won't really see the cloth working. But what you need to do is that you need to go in simulate, and then now you can see it is freaking out for a little reason. I think the order this needs to be the opposite. So this first and then this. Yeah, so you can see that I'm simulating and then it's showing nicely the cloth. And then if you're going to render, remember to use warm-up frames, so you make sure that that is nice and settled and then you render. But if you stop here, you won't see the cloth working. And that's it. I hope this was helpful and thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think and other ideas. I'm also going to show now what the other people shared in our Discord. So in our Discord channel, I'm going to share here Rebecca. She shared this on LinkedIn as well, which I reshared. So she's done everything in Maya and it's a very cool rig. I thought it was, I don't know, it just looked like soft and malleable, and it's pretty well executed and has the different like pivots that you can rotate with and use. So well done, Rebecca. Then we have Icaro that showed this really cool rig. I think the umbrella is so pretty. So you know, he looked into these details of all the small controllers. He done a bit of cloth simulation. I thought it was cool that he also did this opposite pose when it's like extremely flat open, and the render is very pretty. He also rendered this option with the controllers and the structure. I think it's really cool. I don't know how to do that actually, to render the controllers in the real. So yeah, very, very nice. Then Sir Voxelot done a bit of the setup in a reel, and then also really played with the, you know, it was the same rig that I used, the skeleton mesh, and but he played a lot with this little dangly bit here on the side, which is, yeah, really cool and interesting. Let me just skip a little bit so we can see. Yeah, so there is a rig for it, and then you can adjust the angle, but then also the dynamic runs after that as well. So yeah, that was cool. And then E10 shared the rig as well, so it's a, you know, nice, cool, clean setup in the reel. I can see that he's using some curves here. Sorry, I'm using the pronoun he, but if I'm wrong, let me know. So it's yeah, it's another way to drive a controller. So the way I was doing, using the interpolate to interpolate between values, but you could also, for example, hook up a curve that, you know, you have the input and the output values, and that drives the controllers as well. And I thought it was cool that he added a pivot here to the top. So when it's a prop, sometimes we forget to add those other pivots that the animators can use and attach the you know, the hand of the characters. So that was it. Thanks for everyone that shared their work, and I hope this was helpful, and see you next time. Bye.